Hello and welcome to today's webinar. Thank you for joining. My name's Tom and I'm joined by my colleague Daniil. We are both members of the responsive support team and we specialize in SuperControl's Airbnb integration. Also joining us from Airbnb is Patrice, who is market manager for Northern Europe, and we will have Simona, who is senior partner manager for Europe, the Middle East and Africa. We've worked with Airbnb for a number of years, and Simona has been a key ally in building the strong partner relationship that we have today. In today's session, it's both for clients who are just starting out with integrated listings, but also for those with longer term Airbnb experience. So we're confident that there will be something for everyone. So first of all, we're going to have an introduction from Patrice, followed by a presentation, followed by plenty of time to answer your questions. So while the presentation is running, please do use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen to ask any questions that are on your mind. And over to you, Patrice. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this session. So as Tom introduced me already, my name is Patrice, but it's okay to call me Patrick. I'm used to it now. And I'm a market manager for Northern Europe. So I specialize working with professional hosts such as yourself, be they integrated or not, actually, through a channel manager. So I'm going to give you today an overview of what's happening on Airbnb, what the demand looks like actually, and what you can do to actually attract this demand, how you can perfect your account and your listings. So let's get started. So what I usually do, okay, I need to click. So that's the agenda. First of all, we'll look at the booker's behavior. So how the guests have behaved, especially since COVID, because there's been changes. So I'm gonna highlight this. Also, probably already very familiar, but it's always good to remind it. Second, I'm going to focus on high performance hosts and what exactly they are doing at the account level, at the listing level, to attract this demand and to be actually to stand out actually among the rest of the offer on Airbnb. And the last section, very quickly, but it's also good to keep in mind, it's host standards, that basically quality criteria that you have on Airbnb. That's really critical, obviously, for the success of your listings. So as I always start, Airbnb fast facts, you probably know those figures already. So more than 8 million Airbnb guest arrivals all time on Airbnb, and more than 4 million hosts on Airbnb right now. And a total of $110 billion earned by hosts all time. And an average annual, it's almost $8,000 per host. So that's average, so obviously including private owners and professional hosts such as yourself, most likely. Airbnb is trading on top. Those are the figures for last year, actually, 2020. And you can see the recovery or the boom in bookings for summer. And you can see the red line representing Airbnb that is far above the main competition, or what we consider the main competition. And we believe there's definitely an image in people's mind that when you're told that you can travel to self-catering rather than hotels or professional hostings, Airbnb is the first that comes to mind of people. That's why we have a lot of traffic, even more so this year. We're going to see a bit more about this. So especially because of this kind of accommodation, you're more likely to find on Airbnb rather than other websites. So let's look at the demand. This, I'm sure you observed, it totally makes sense. Airbnb has already been good in terms of domestic demand. It was an average 70%. We're speaking mostly in vacation rental, so that is outside of big cities. But since COVID, obviously with people not able to travel, it's more than 90%. It's never 100%, which is interesting to note, even though you're not supposed to, but the fact is, obviously it's mostly domestic. And so now people are looking for more private and comfortable stays. This figure is simple. 83% of bookings are now on entire homes. You're familiar probably at the very beginning, at least, that Airbnb offered a lot of private rooms inside someone's primary home, for example, or even shared rooms. This still happens, but obviously much less, and that's a trend we expected, obviously. So people are definitely looking for something that is, isolated somehow, basically, sometimes even remote. So what guests are searching right now? I'm going to go in each of one in more details. So last minute bookings, flexibility, I'm talking in terms of a cancellation policy, longer stays, and I'll tell you more about this duration of stays. And so I just touch a bit of privacy and cleanliness. That also seems to make sense in the current context. Last minute bookings, what I'm talking about people who book within a week and even the same day, actually. This was already quite big at Airbnb compared to other websites, but it's even more so now. And you can take advantage of this by ensuring that your advance notice reservation preferences are set to the minimum. Minimum you're comfortable with, obviously. Not everyone can accept reservation for the same day. But if you can set for 1-2 days notice, for example, that definitely gives you a good age to get this last minute demand. I'm talking about, yes, some few figures here. The same day bookings have doubled since pre-COVID period. That was already quite big. And now more than half of the recent bookings are done within a week of check-in. So this is impressive. It's not all bookings, because obviously since Boris Johnson's announcement, we had a peak of reservations for summer, but still people tend to book last minute on Airbnb. So flexibility, like I said, I'm talking about cancellation policy. That makes sense as well. People are looking now for solutions to get a full refund in case they can't travel in uncertain times. You can see those figures I'm putting on the right side. Pre-COVID, almost half listings on Airbnb were set to a strict cancellation policy, where you can at best get 50% back if you cancel on time. And now this has dropped to 26%, and moderate and flexible cancellation policies have increased accordingly. So moderate and flexible offer the possibility for a full refund. On moderate policies, it's up to 5 days before check-in, and on flexible, it's up to 24 hours before check-in. So it's not always easy to set up those conditions, but it's always worth, negotiating, especially if you have to negotiate with your private owners. But there's definitely something that people are looking for, at least until we have certainty. Like I said, we had a peak of bookings, on 22nd February with Boris Johnson's announcement. Before that, we already had some bookings, but mostly for those flexible cancellation policies. So it's always good to try and see if you can actually set those policies, because obviously, as long as there's no restriction, people want to travel. The cancellation rate on Airbnb is very low, on 9% on average. So it's definitely worth, making this switch. Because of the people looking for flexible cancellation policies, last year Airbnb implemented a filter in the search page, as you can see on this quick animation. So that's why it's definitely worth doing so. When you click on it, you actually show the flexible and moderate cancellation policies. But so if people do that, that exclude the strict policies. So it's very important to keep in mind. Longer stays, I'm talking about short stays versus weekly here. What you can see on this graph, the line on top, the full line, purplish, whatever it is, represents the bookings for 2 to 6 nights, which was definitely, as you can see, the high trend on Airbnb until pre-COVID, basically. And now you can see that it's dropping almost exactly the same rate that this light bluish line is increasing. And that line represents stays for 7 to 27 nights. It's now accounting for 38% of all searches on Airbnb. So this is a trend that kind of makes sense now. People are, looking for staycations. They are, gathering all their holidays at one moment to stay for longer. And we see a drop definitely in the short stays. The usual 2 to 3 weekend stay. Weekend travel, for example. That's interesting, because from 1 week we can actually try and get this demand by offering a promotion, a discount that actually shows on your listing. I can show you that a bit later and tell you more about it. To privacy and cleanliness, like I said, it kind of makes sense. It's advised to share the details of your cleaning routine now, especially in those times, and also to commit to the 5-step enhanced cleaning process that we've implemented on Airbnb. That shows also on the listing. To help encourage social distancing by offering self-check-in and check-out when possible. That's definitely something that people are looking for now. And minimize person-to-person contact by avoiding any routine maintenance during the stay. Just avoid meeting people, basically. Best amenities to offer. That's what's trending, and it's a kind of new. So working remotely, as one would expect, people now are looking on the filters for laptop-friendly workspace and Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi was already popular, but even more so. And the laptop-friendly workspace is definitely booming on Airbnb. So that also makes sense. People looking for a place to work that more remote, away from town. With family and friends, the size of the group booking on Airbnb has increased. It's now more than 3. More than 50% of bookings are more than 3 people staying in a listing. And with pets, that's definitely new. Really, definitely an increase in people making sure that the place is pet friendly because they're bringing the dog with them. So it's actually good to know and make sure that it's clarified on your listing if it's possible, of course, because sometimes we're talking about pretty big dogs. Okay, so that was the overview. I didn't want to stay too much on this because you probably know all of this already, all those threads. You observed that probably last summer at least. Now I want to focus more on the high-performing host attributes. So what makes a good listing, a good account? So I'm going to go into details here, but the overview, I told already flexible cancellation policy because it shows. So both on the search results is a filter and on the listing. Enhanced claiming requirements accepted. So definitely advised you to do it. Absolutely, it shows here. 5-star reviews. I'll talk about it a bit more details after, but obviously yeah, the ratings that the guests have given you. All amenities that are mapped. So here, what we show, for example, to one of the among the most looked for, you have free parking, kitchen, workspace, self-checking, and so on. I'll go into more details in the most popular ones. A clear property name, same, I'm gonna talk a bit more about it. Strong property description, not only the place, but the area or the surroundings. Again, I'll touch a bit more about this. And attractive landing picture. So let's go actually in this picture. So use great photos to attract guests. Obviously, quality image. It's not always that simple, especially with private owners listing on Airbnb. We even have a guidebook on Airbnb on the website where we explain people as they can try and make quality images even with a smartphone, for example. This is critical, you know, to have the correct light according to what you're photographing. So quality, obviously. Pay special attention to the first photo you include. The first one, as you probably already know, is the only one we see in the search results, as you saw a bit earlier in my screenshot. I'll show you again how it looks like. But this first picture has to stand out. If you take, it's an example that comes to mind. If you go to Paris, for example, you look at listings, all those listings in the search results show you the Eiffel Tower. You would expect to see the Eiffel Tower in Paris, nice, but everybody's got the same. So that's your chance to stand out. And think about what's actually most popular among the first picture in your area. It's simple enough, actually, just do a search. So definitely an advice I give to anyone. Search for listings in your area, look what comes up, what comes more often, and try to stand out from this. Your first picture is one of the first things you see. You want people to, you know, get attracted to it. Include images of the whole listing. There's no limit to the number of pictures you can put on your listing on Airbnb. The average, I believe, is around 28 per listing. That's a lot. And the advice actually is try to put several pictures of the same room on different angles so that to give you guests a better perspective, you know, of how big it is or, you know, how it's exactly shaped. I have personal experiences where I've been tricked by that, where it looks big and when you arrive, it's actually small. It just took from one weird angle, things like that. So it's always good to set expectations. You know, this is, if the room is small, it is small, you know, don't try to lie about it, basically. Write descriptive captions, something people don't think about. You can put just one word sometimes on each picture, sorry, just to explain what you're looking at. This is the first room, this one and the second room, or a very specific feature you want to point out, like, look, there's a pool table here, or here's the hot tub, you know, for example. Do not hesitate to do this. And the last point is quite important because we do have more and more requests. It's highlight accessibility features. That's the example I'm showing you here. If you set the amenities of the listing description has accessibility friendly, basically, it's good to show them that, because we've seen counter examples on Airbnb where say it's okay for people on a wheelchair, and turns out that the entrance, you can see on the picture that says there are steps. Here, for example, this person has shown a picture of the entrance and actually highlighted the fact that there's no step here. You can walk in a wheelchair. That might not seem something you think about necessarily, but we do have many requests on that. And again, it's about setting expectation. If it's not really accessible for people in a wheelchair, just make it clear in the very beginning so that you don't have someone disappointed and that will, you know, impact your rating afterwards, obviously. So about the title, right? A catchy title. Again, look at what people do and avoid, you know, the mere sober description, like a 1-bedroom city apartment. Try to stand out here. There's a piece of advice here, just to make it more visible, more nicer, I'd say, is use a capital letter for the first letter of each word. It might sound simple, but it's, you know, it's prettier, basically. Like this example here, instead of the 1-bedroom city apartment, try charming 1-bedroom apartment near downtown. It's a bit more developed, it's nicer already. Good examples I've included here. Those are actual listings, by the way. Seaside cottage, sauna, kayaks, and home theater. Here you focus on, okay, this is a cottage, this is what you can do, this is what we have that other listings don't have. That's a really good way to stand out. Second example as well, Old Town Square apartment with fireplace and home office. Is aiming at totally different guests here. We're looking at someone who is looking for a place to work from home, basically. And last one, actually, kid-friendly cabin near hiking trails and lake. So for families, for people looking for outdoors activities, perfect. That's what you want to see in your title. And that's what you see on the search results again. So it has to be really, you know, concise. Mindful of time. Okay, about description, I'm gonna talk more. This is not one right answer here, obviously, but those are some pieces of advice that you can see on the website. Actually, I'm going to try to give you some more practical examples. So showcase your special features. I said it already, and I say it again. What's different in your listing compared to the other ones in the same area? This example here, a real one, our highly acclaimed mountain bike trails are just 15-minute bike ride or 5-minute drive away. I wonder why you would try 5 minutes to go bike riding, but you never know. Tell the story of the space. That's where takes a bit more imagination and time, of course, to work on. But for this example, let's say you'll feel like you're in a tree house. I've seen, for example, listings that try to look like inside of a ship. Actually, play on that. You have to work on that. If you look at my background, you understand that's something I actually like. So definitely do not hesitate to play on this. Another example, a perfect base for exploring is someone who's used this for an apartment in the city center. Obviously, every apartment in city center would kind of look like the same. The story would be the same. So you have to play on the story. And it's actually switching to the next point. Is actually you think of like the traveler. Why is he coming here? Is he going to stay the listing? Is he just going to use it as a base to go outdoors, explore, visit? So that's what you must keep in mind, actually. So when you think like a traveler, it's also share the must-know information. And I'll actually joining another point later about being authentic and honest, is you also have to let them know what's actually not there. And that's important. If there's no Wi-Fi, you don't want someone to book the place because they actually want to work from home and it turns out the Wi-Fi, or it's not reliable, because it's a remote place. You're aiming at different guests here, people who will actually go outdoors. So try to think of who's coming there and why and what they are looking for. And also remember that people assume a lot. If it's not clearly said that this is not the Wi-Fi, for example, just make sure that it's clearly specified. Be thoughtful and specific. The example here, I don't know if it really translates what I want to say, but this example on the listing says direct beach access and stunning ocean view from every room, because you can actually see from every room. If you just say ocean view and turns out you can indeed see it, but from the bathroom window, it's not exactly what the guest is expecting. So that's what I mean by saying being specific. If you have a view of I don't know, whatever, nice place, nice view, specify from which window. And if it's a big one, it's if you're actually tricking, saying I get a nice view because if you go on that, on the top roof and you can see a corner of the window, that's going to be a very bad guest experience, and you will pay for that in a rating later. So keep it brief. Talk about aspects that aren't already covered elsewhere. For example, amenities. You will want to talk about very important amenities that actually set you apart, like they had hot tub, swimming pool, anything. Or if you're aiming at people working from home, you might want to be more specific about Wi-Fi, the capability, the reliability, for example. But everything else that you would expect that is already listed in your amenities, no need to talk about it again. The kitchen, you see what I mean? So as said, be authentic and honest. Don't oversell or exaggerate. Set expectations. That's basically what you need to keep in mind here. I have a very specific example of my own listing, for example, and I need to be very specific that it's so remote. It's in Brittany, for those who wonder, that you 1 hour away by car from the nearest town. And there's no other way to go there. There's no public. No, I have to be very clear about this. Same for the reliability of the Wi-Fi, actually. So, write it down, make sure people see that so that they don't expect something that is not going to be there. And the last piece of advice is definitely always worth doing: read other listings for inspiration. That's actually what I've done myself. That's what I've done even to find those examples, obviously. So do not hesitate to do this. Look at what other listings look like and how you can be different from those ones, basically. Actually, going pretty fast. Stand out in search results. Here I'm talking about amenities. So we already talked about what's popular, especially at the moment, what's changed, basically. But here I put you the top looked for amenities. It's more or less in this order. So the Wi-Fi, it has always been popular, but not as much as now. If people go to a place that they just use as a base to explore, they don't really need Wi-Fi. They usually have their smartphone, for example, and 4G, and that's it. That's all they need. Now you have people who are actually going to stay there, not move there, and actually work from there. So they need something reliable. So again, Wi-Fi is definitely looked after. Self-check-in, I already mentioned it as well. That was already popular. It's even more so popular now for obvious reasons. Laptop-friendly workspace, again, that's even more popular. And the free parking is still there. It used to be the most popular amenity that people look for on Airbnb. And that's interesting because you don't necessarily think about it. The point is, if you got a place that is in a city center, that might make sense if you get a car. But people look for it even if you go to a very small village, for example. And you might think when you list your space, that's obvious you can park, it's a small place. Well, it's not obvious to your guests. They don't necessarily know that. They want to make sure, actually, and they're coming by car because it is a remote place, obviously. So do not forget to put that one because it's still selected a lot, actually, in the search. So pet-friendly spaces, I told it already, it's definitely booming. People are traveling with their pets. So if you can actually have pets in the listing, do not forget to list it. And last one, it's good to remind, it's instant booking. And SuperControl users, you probably all using instant book, but it's actually a very good thing because people actually click on that in the filters, in the search results. And it is still the case, even though people tend to be more wary and ask more questions before booking, especially in those times. They like to make sure of this or that. And they might ask you questions before actually make the booking, but they still select the ones that they can book the moment they want. So that's a very good point, actually. Okay, so that's an actual search I've done myself, just to give you an idea, and 3 examples I like, actually. So that's 1 week in July. It's somewhere in Cornwall, I forgot where. What you see, for example, the first one, Torbay, there it is. First listing, you see there's a discount. I mentioned it earlier. If you set up a minimum 10% discount for a weekly stay, it will show in your search results this way. You have a strike-through price. Was this price, new price. That's actually helpful. It actually helps the ranking of your listing here. You also can see the average rating, 4.67 with 3 reviews. By the way, 3 reviews is the minimum so that we show the average rate on Airbnb. Less than 3 reviews, you just don't see anything here. And you can see the first picture, it's inside, so obviously the main feature here. And the title, Dunraven Holiday Cottage, half a mile to the beach. That's a good one, it's specific. So the advantage is it's close to the beach, half a mile, you know exactly how far it is. And then you see the basic requirements, like basic criteria, sorry, like 5 guests, 3 bedrooms, 4 beds, free parking, Wi-Fi, kitchen, heating. There you go. Next is interesting as well because you can see it has a Superhost tag. There's no discount. It's cheaper, but there's no discount, and it's actually playing against. So the idea is, instead of having a different, cheaper price for weekly stays, is actually keep the same price and put it in the form of a discount, and it will show on Airbnb. So that's a good thing. What's interesting as well is you can see the title, Girls Cry Newly Built House in Goodrington. Problem is, just on top of that, on Airbnb, you see entire house in Goodrington. So here it just wasted valuable space in the title. You've got only 50 characters. You want to focus on what stands out and what is the special feature, what's differentiated from the other listings. And here it just nothing else than newly built house. So that's too bad. And the last example is probably one of the best ones. So it's Superhost, is a 5-star average rating, so 5-star every review, obviously. A discount for weekly stays, and the title is pretty good. Newly renovated apartment with stunning sea views. And obviously they picked a first picture that shows the view you can have from the listing. So that's pretty good actually. So that gives you an example, what's good, what's maybe not that good, what kind of feature you want to focus on the first picture as well. Is it the view, the inside, or as you can see, the second one is the view of the whole house, because it's an interesting shape, let's say. So it's really up to you. And most importantly, again, try and do those searches yourself. Look at what's offered in the surroundings and how you can stand out from this. That's definitely the best advice I can give here. The profile, that's something also few people actually take time to do. It's not necessarily that long, but it's definitely useful, and even more so now, because people want to be reassured before they actually make the booking. They want to talk to the host. They want to talk to whoever is actually, managing the place. Am I going to meet them, or is I going to set up everything so that I can self-check-in? This is a professional host, and although it doesn't look like, because she chose to actually put a picture of herself and her first name, and that's actually a good point. It is actually very positive. Guests on Airbnb have a tendency to prefer, the personal relation. That's an advice I give. Even if a professional agency, for example, there are several people working there. The good idea, if they're okay with it, of course, is to use the name of the person who's actually going to talk to the guests, make it more personal, and it definitely has an impact. And in terms of description, of course, you have to be very clear that you're a professional. And it's here that you can actually reassure them that how much experience you have in the field and how many properties, and you know very well the surroundings. You can give advice as well in terms of activities, or what to do, where to find this or that, and explain how the check-in is going to take place, and what services you can offer in addition. So that's definitely a positive. So it doesn't necessarily take that long, just a bit of thinking, but it's definitely worth it. People do look at this, and it does play in your favor if you've done that. So I was, focused mostly on those parts. Now I just remind on terms of host quality, what's happening here. So how does the star ratings work? For those who are already familiar with Airbnb, you probably know that very well, but just a reminder. So you've got all those criteria that the guests are going to rate after your stay. So cleanliness, self-explanatory. Accuracy, that's where it comes to the description being accurate and honest. So if you said this feature is present, make sure it is. If it's not, or if people assume it would be when it's not, make sure it's clear as well, so that you have good rating here. The check-in experience. So basically, is it meeting the people in person, or is it a self-check-in system? It has to work well, obviously. Make sure that there's no issue here. Communication, it's usually translating how fast you reply to the questions they have, especially on the day of check-in. If they run late, if they lost something, they have a last-minute question, that's the moment. If you can reply quick enough, because the more they wait, the more they're worried, and in the end, it can reflect on that rating. So location, obviously, there's not much you can do about the location of your listing, but the question is, again, to set expectation. Is a neighborhood good or bad? It's not your choice. Just very specific. Talk about it in your description, and again, don't exaggerate, don't oversell. It's that's how it is. It's remote, so it's nice if you want to work outdoors, but the Wi-Fi is not reliable. Well, just say it. That's no. Also, I see an example here that's something quite important and to keep in mind. Noise expectations. Let's say your listing is close to the local pub. Well, when they will reopen, obviously, but make sure it's clear actually on the listing. So people don't mind. They actually look for this. They're happy that it's close by a pub, for example. But if your guests are actually looking for a quiet place and they want to go to bed early, basically, that's something they should know before they book at your place. So definitely set expectations. The value, well, that's obviously value for price. So that's definitely up to you. Again, it will obviously be reflected by how accurate you've been in describing your listing. The amenities here, it's more about, as long as it's been made clear what's available, what's not, is obviously making sure that they work. So it kind of makes sense, but if something breaks up during the stay, that's a bad experience, obviously. And even more so, and those times, then it's not specifically advised to send a maintenance person during a stay when we try to avoid contact-to-contact person, obviously. So that would be a quite bad experience that would reflect as well. So make sure everything's in good order, basically. And last one, overall experience. One thing very important to keep in mind, that it's not an average of all the other criteria. It's a separate rating that the guest gives you. And that's why you'll see, you've probably already seen, people putting 5 stars everywhere, but the overall is 4 stars, because some people just never give 5 stars. No, that's how people are. So just remember that. The thing is that this overall experience rating is the one that's going to be used for calculating the average for the listing. And all your ratings for all listings will give you also an average for your account at account level. This is taken into consideration, for example, for the superhost status. So in the end, that's the one that's really important. But the other one are no less important, because we show on the listing, and you remember the example I showed you, for example, if you got, I don't know, let's say you always have 5-star ratings for cleanliness. Well, we'll actually show on top of your listing page a sparkling clean. Like all guests in the past, like among 10, I don't know, have rated 5 stars for the cleanliness. That's obviously good. So all of this is important, obviously. And everything you do, all the work you've put on the listing description, photos, everything we talked about before, works towards the guest satisfaction. He has the best experience possible. He knows exactly what to expect, and he finds what he expected, so that in the end, you get the correct rating here. And the last point I want to remind actually is the response rate. This is important. This is more at the account level. It basically calculates how fast you're replying to the first request from, or the first message from guests. How it works exactly is that we take the percentage of messages in the past 30 days that you've been able to reply within 24 hours. When I say reply, it can be, that's what I wrote at the bottom actually. If that's a reservation request, for example, it's just accepting this reservation. So the good thing is, when you're using Instant Book, like most of you are, the fact that someone books without asking you anything and it's automatically accepted works in favor of your response rate. So that's a good point. Now, like I said, most people, especially now, are asking questions beforehand, and that's where you need to reply within 24 hours. Also keep in mind, this rule works for the first message, very first message a guest sends you. Once it's done, if he has other questions in the same message thread, if you can't then reply those ones within 24 hours, you will have no impact on this rating. But keep in mind, this is important. It works at account level, so for all your listings, obviously, and it's also one of the criteria for Superhost. Okay, that was a lot, and I believe I'm beyond time. Yeah, that's it for the presentation. I hope it wasn't too fast and has been helpful. Anyway, now we have time for questions, and I think we can just get on it.
Thank you very much for the presentation there, Patrice. It was brilliant. There was a lot of really good points, you know, for things that a host might not even think of for improving their listing. I really liked the point about just a simple thing like adding your first name to that little description on the host. You know, it just provides that just a little bit extra personal connection, which I think a lot of guests really like as well. So there's a lot of really good stuff covered there, I think.
Thank you. But exactly, and there's a lot of things you have to keep in mind, and mostly because Airbnb started mostly with private owners, and there's a lot of things that people who are used to traveling on Airbnb are still expecting that look like, you know, what it was before. So try to play on this, basically. That it does take a bit of time in, you know, working on your profile, on the description, but it's worth it. It's definitely worth it.
Would you, just a question I have, would you have any recommendations for a listing that previously may have been performing well, but over time has not performed as well as it once had, you know, for just improving the traffic, you know, getting more traffic to the listing, and then obviously more bookings as well?
Okay, so we're talking about a listing that already had ratings, or obviously good, and then no reservations at all, or lower ratings?
So just a listing that may have, you know, been popular, may have received a lot of bookings previously, and then as over time it may have started to underperform. You know, there could be various reasons for that, whether it's not keeping the listing up to date, not keeping on trends, you know, things like that.
That's obviously the hardest. I mean, I was thinking of another scenario where actually there's a listing that never got bookings for a good while, and So after a while, it just disappears in search results. If there was no booking or no rating, in that case, the best way would actually be to delete it and start over, because there's nothing to recover in terms of good ratings and reviews. You can do that; there's no problem at all. But if you already had ratings and they've lowered, you can't do that. And if you try to do this, there's a trust and safety team at Airbnb that's become pretty good at tracking this data. So actually,
So if booking, Patrice, so if bookings, had started to peter out, you'd recommend deleting that listing and just starting afresh with it. If there's no carry over your reviews and things like that as well, yeah.
But if there's no previous reviews, but if there are reviews, like I said, the trust and safety team would not allow you to just delete and start over in that case. That's trickier. You cannot start fresh with a listing where the rates have decreased. So this one is going to be hard. You have to play on everything you can to make it popular again. So everything that stands up in the listing, so that would be discounts, to be honest. If the ratings are not helping, people will see that and read the reviews. You have to give something else instead. Say, okay, this has not been popular. Look at the reviews, exactly why the rating has dropped. If it's because of a specific amenity, for example, then maybe write down the listing, this has been fixed or this has been renewed. You have to be specific here. It's again about setting expectations, basically explaining in the description, okay, this is why it has, in essence, this is why it has dropped, because there was this issue that has been fixed, or now it's been clarified. That's the best you can do. But then to attract people and recover a good ranking, you'll have to work on the price, absolutely, on a discount, everything you can actually, because you can't change anymore all of a sudden this average rating. So like I said, everything that can be filtered in your favor, instant booking, the lower price, obviously, the cancellation policy as well. Be more flexible in that case. Everything that actually can be actioned in the search results. Look at the filters, look at what you can put, and look again at the top amenities that I just mentioned. Maybe there was one of those amenities that were not in place in the listing, but consider putting it in to give more chance to get visibility. But that's going to be tough. I'll be honest, it's going to be hard.
Yeah, thanks, Patrice. So it's definitely about doing your research in the market as well, isn't it? If you're a host with a listing that's about to go live on Airbnb, and from that, you can look at similar properties and decide what your price could be, to keep it competitive, see who's offering discounts, see what cancellation policies are being offered as well, and then that will rank you higher, in search results and things, and ensure that your property's booked over other similar properties in the area.
Actually, the advice remains the same as what I just presented. You have to stand out, do something different. The simple fact, the algorithm for the search results is actually measuring what it can. So it's just actions from users. So that is when they click. So make sure they're at least intrigued by your listing and they click on it. Maybe they open it and see, okay, no, that's not what I'm looking for. But fair enough. You already got that click, that's attraction, that's visibility, and that actually raises your ranking. So yeah, look at what's offered in the area. Most people will do the same or have the same, like I said, first picture. Try to get a different one, something that would stand out.
Perfect. Thanks, Patrice. So shall we get into the questions?
Yes.
Do you see anything that you'd like to just pluck out and answer straight away, or would you like me to send the questions across to you?
Cool.
So I see a question there about pets. I see a few actually. Okay. It's not currently easy to charge for pets on SuperControl listings. Can this be changed?
Well, I can't really say for SuperControl, but the fact is it's not easy on Airbnb as well, to be honest. Basically, what we lack, what we're not really developed on Airbnb is for extra services that you want to charge, indeed. On Airbnb at the moment, the only thing that is actually integrated is when you go through the feature called the Resolution Center. It is convenient. You manage the payments. There's no fee applied on those ones. No Airbnb service fee, I mean. So it is convenient. But you can't select it at booking, for example, include it in the initial payment. So I admit it's not perfect here. We don't have that many options yet. And most people, what they do is actually write in the house rule, for example, here's the extra charge if you want this or that. and take the payment outside, basically. And that's okay because we just don't, do this on Airbnb. I don't know, again, for SuperControl, and I don't want, I don't have SuperControl, but it's not working on Airbnb anyway, so there's probably no other option, I guess.
Okay, thanks, Patrice. We've got another question here from Julie, and also the same question from Kay. I have a video tour, 360 tour. Is there somewhere on the listing that I can add a link to this?
I know, it's too bad, no. And that's a question I see a lot. And I know other websites do, so it's definitely something we're lacking here. But still no news on that front. The only solution for now is that you can opt in to send emails once you already have a conversation with a guest, but it's already booked at that stage. That's not the solution you're looking for here. But then through that email, you could send the link. But for now, unfortunately, no. I'm really sorry. And there's no, I haven't heard the people working on this or any future release date. There's not the option. So sorry. No.
That's great. Thank you, Patrice. A question from Marie. So we see a lot of media coverage about people booking multiple holidays for the same dates and then picking one that suits their needs and then cancelling the unwanted ones. So has the cancellation rate, I guess would be the question to you, Patrice, on Airbnb increased in the run-up to the easing of the lockdowns?
It has, necessarily, because we're more flexible, indeed. But it's still low compared to the overall market or the other competitions. The main reason is that, as you know, Airbnb takes the payments, and we take the fees as well on those payments. Right? And the fact is, if you cancel even a flexible concession policy, you get full refund less the fees. So that's not something people do on Airbnb. I know that's something, yeah, indeed, people do a lot, probably on other website, but there's absolutely no charge for you, but not on Airbnb. That's a fact. It still happens, don't get me wrong, but probably very less. As I told you, the average figure of 9% cancellation rate on Airbnb. It has increased, yes, but not that much.
Thanks, Patrice. I've got a question from Adam. On some of my listings, the guest sees a message under the prices, add an extra night for just X amount. This is not an offer that we're publishing and causes confusion for the guest because they try to take up the offer and it doesn't work. So is there a way to remove that from the listing?
Okay, well, I don't think you can remove. It's a good question. Indeed, that's on Airbnb. You don't do anything to see this appear. It is a possibility. However, you've set your listing, well, the settings, actually, the booking settings. If we show this, that's because they actually can book an extra night, and the overall price would be different, and that would be a different price per night. That's what it calculates. But I agree, it can be confusing, and but if it's there, it's because they can actually do this. So that's. But if the question is, can we remove this? I'm afraid not, unless you change the settings so that it's not possible to just book one night, but it's not something very easy to do. And I wouldn't probably wouldn't advise to make a setting when you can just book week by week, or 7 day by 7 day, basically. That wouldn't be flexible enough at that stage. So now, I'm sorry if it's confusing, and I understand why, but the thing is, what it shows is actually, given the price you pay for 7 nights, if you take 8 nights, it would just cost you that much more. That's basically how it shows. And but no, I'm afraid you can't opt out this feature. Sorry.
Thanks, Patrice. I'll give you a chance to breathe now because I've got a question for SuperControl, which I'll cover. Description of photos. Sorry, this question is from Melissa. Thank you, Melissa. On SuperControl, we have written under each photo, but it does not seem to feed through to Airbnb. Where do we type the wording to ensure that this feeds through? So there's a box on your property photos page. Now that's in the properties edit, settings, and then photos section. There's a box just below each photo that you can write in a short caption, which will then send through to Airbnb and display on your listing. If that's not happening for any reason, Melissa, please pop a ticket in and we'll look into that for you.
I've also got a question, if that's okay. Is there any data that we have that would optimize listings for like domestic travelers? Like, should the cleaning and arrival protocols be higher in descriptions? Does that attract more people, or is there a way to optimize that? Jeez.
Do you want to ask that to Patrice again?
Patrice,
Sorry, Danu.
Is there any data that you have on optimizing listings to attract domestic travelers? Like, does it matter if the cleaning and arrival protocols are higher in the description? Is that showing to attract more travelers or more bookings?
It's probably not, I was going to say, but hard to tell because since last year we have almost only domestic bookings, obviously. So, but nothing stood out in that way. I don't think there is. The main difference was, I think, the most affected markets actually were the city center, big cities, London, first of all, where there were a lot of foreign tourists coming, and they're not coming at all anyway. And so they had to change completely. Like most of them switched to long term, like monthly stays, but it's quite different. But in terms of, especially for example, the cleaning protocols, no, it's the same everywhere, to be honest. I didn't see any difference whatsoever in any market.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I was actually replying to a question, but maybe I can speak out loud. I saw that it's Diane actually asking about the specific case of Scotland. And you're correct in pointing this out. I mentioned Boris Johnson's announcement. That was for England specifically. And sorry if there was some confusion here. The point is people were already looking on listings on Airbnb, specifically for summer. Since December, actually, we've seen a huge peak. But obviously, they were not booking, or few bookings, mostly on flexible cancellation policies, for example, because they want to guarantee that they can get the money back, obviously. And the people are already creating wish lists, for example. At the moment, the very day of the announcement, we saw an increased peak of bookings that people already knew what they wanted to book. That's what I mean. So what it means that even if you don't have the visibility yet, I think, for example, in Northern Ireland specifically, it's good to be already online, everything set, pricing, availability for summer, especially because that's where people are looking. Because the moment we get the green light from government, it just booms. That's what we expect. And that's probably see also an increase this week in Scotland, because indeed I saw that the timeline has just been released, I think, on Tuesday for Scotland. But a good point, and sorry if there was some confusion here.
Thanks, Patrice. I have a question from Chloe. During lockdown in tier systems, we had to cancel people who had booked from areas that were not allowed to travel. As a result, we didn't get superhost status in January. Is there any way to rectify that?
Okay, rectify, I'm afraid not likely. The only way is that if you think there are cancellation penalties that will apply to you and that cost you the superhost issues and that shouldn't have, then it's more a customer support ticket. You know, just make the case that this cancellation should be without penalties, especially if you tell me that there were cancellation because of official restrictions. In that case, it's definitely not your fault. So it's good to contact customer support in that case, definitely, and flag it. If you think that's specifically the penalties from cancellations that cost you the status. Now, I can also add as a point that we've put some flexibility actually in terms of superhost status. And last I checked, actually, we did not take into consideration the cancellation rate, because the host cancellation rate specifically, because of the given circumstances. And the specific situation has been extended till end of year, actually 2021. So at the moment for superhost, all we look at is the average rating that needs to be more than 4.8. And the response rate I mentioned, actually, that it needs to be more than 90%. But the cancellation shouldn't affect you. So there's probably something else. That's my guess. But if you think something wrong, that do not hesitate to reach out to customer support and say, okay, this cancellation impacted me negatively and it shouldn't have. And in this case, it should be possible to change that.
Thanks, Patrice. And as an extension to that question, Chloe also asks, are there any plans for Airbnb to check whether people are allowed to travel before they can book?
Well, we try to do so. There's a team actually, we're working on this. But as you can understand, it's quite challenging, especially last year when all things started and we try to work case by case. But the COVID situation was obviously exceptional, and in the end, it just applied a rule everywhere, basically. And it might sound unfair, I understand. Now, if we're talking specifically, sorry, about COVID, now there's no such possibility to cancel for free. From the moment now that people have made a booking, let's say from this year, everybody's aware of the situation. So now you are accountable for the cancellation policy you've picked at that stage. Now, all the governments are allowing people to travel domestically. Let's say you have someone from abroad who's booking your place in UK, let's say, and they can't travel, that's on them. They should know at that stage. I mean, there's no more excuse at that point. You know, we can understand it was exceptional last year when it all broke out in March 2020, but now it's no longer a valid excuse, if you will, to have a full refund cancellation. I hope it answers your question. I don't know if it's specific enough.
Thanks, Patrice. And just along the same vein of the superhost, Danielle asks, how do you achieve superhost status? What are the key requirements for that?
Yeah, good question. The key requirement, like I said, at the moment, we only look at the rating. That's the most important and probably the most difficult one to achieve, actually, for professional hosts with several listings. Obviously, you need an average, the overall rating I was talking about in the presentation, you need an average of minimum 4.8. This is tough, and I'm not gonna lie, but this is not meant to be easy, obviously, because this is a big plus to get the status. So that's the main one. And response rate as well, I mentioned 90%. And now in normal times, but we don't look at this at the moment, we look at the number of reservations you've made in the past year, and that's the minimum is 10. So on the other hand, for professional hosts with multiple listings, usually it's not a problem. And the final one, which I just mentioned, actually we're answering the previous question, is a cancellation rate. Basically, you must not cancel any booking yourself. If your guest cancels, there's no problem. But if you do a cancellation, and that's your fault, there's penalties coming with it, then for 1 year, this cancellation is taken into consideration, and you just cannot become superhost. That's why the question was asked, I guess, actually. So if there's a valid reason for you to cancel, like we mentioned, restrictions, you have to make sure to cancel it that way. And to do so, the best is to contact customer support, just to tell them, okay, listen, I have to cancel, but that's because of this official reason that is valid, so that you don't get impacted. But yeah, just to summarize, the main one, and the most challenging one, let's be honest, is the rating of 4.8. So that's across all listings on your account. That's a big one.
Thanks, Patrice. Danielle, have you got any questions previously sent before the webinar for us?
I have. I've got some questions about the photographs, because Airbnb has to have a certain amount of photographs. On the landing picture, what actually drives the bookings? Is it like interior views or exterior? And should that be changed to like reflect the seasons?
That's a good one. Okay. Okay. So first part of your question, there's no right answer, because it really depends where you are, why people are booking the listing. Basically, again, are there people who are going to actually walk around, visit and go stay outdoors? In which case, it's good to show the actual landscape or the view from the window, for example. And if it's more for, let's say someone working from home, it's good to show the space where they're actually going to spend most of the time, basically. Now, again, reiterate my advice of standing out. Look at what other people do, what they put as a first picture, and try to do something different. This is critical. And the second part is very interesting, because we do not have this feature, and I believe other websites do, where the pictures automatically change with the season. This is really smart, and I would advise to do so. The problem kind of being that you have to change it manually. But especially if you do have heavy snows in the winter, that's definitely a good thing to change it. But that's a good question, and it's definitely a good advice I would give you. You have to change it according to what you actually find. That's definitely what you want to do.
Have you found like the order of the photos matters at all? The order that you have them, like would you have the living space and then the bathroom, or what kind of order should they be in for Optimise?
It's hard to tell. I don't think it does. We advise to put many pictures anyway. So in the end, I don't think. I suppose it's more consistent. you know, to look first at the living room, maybe then the kitchen, the room, things like that. It makes sense instinctively, but I don't really have this answer. To be honest, we don't really have I know other companies do. We don't have a lab where we look at what people actually look. We don't really have this kind of information. I know people have a tendency to stop immediately looking at the listing if there's something that's wrong, even on one picture. That is, you're looking at several pictures, and all of a sudden it's something that's not pretty or poor quality. Or even I've seen that with a picture that has been loaded upside down. The person just stopped looking and went to another listing. So quality is key. There's no real good answer in terms of order, but I suppose it goes without saying it's common sense. Like I was saying, you start with the main living space, then the dining room, kitchen, rooms, in that order maybe, and try to tell a story kind of by the order, basically. It's hard to give you a correct answer, but it probably does have an impact, and especially if there's something that's really out of place. Like I said, that's definitely a stopper. So be careful for that.
Thanks, Patrice. I have a couple of questions about managing an Airbnb account on behalf of someone else. Okay. And the question's asking that if they use the login details to access someone else's account to respond to inquiries and manage bookings on their behalf, is this permitted by Airbnb?
Important question, because it is not. Let's face it. Then you run the risk of being locked out because we regularly we send a security, a verification code actually to the device that has been recorded on the account, especially when there's a login from a different device, basically. And obviously we send a code to the phone. If it's not your account, well, you won't receive it unless you put your own phone, obviously. But we've developed some different features to allow you to manage listings on behalf of the people without having to log in their account, actually. Like the co-hosting. If you go to a listing page and you go on the tab on the right, actually, so on the first page you have the listing details and the pricing and everything, and the last one gives you some hosting solutions to either ask someone to co-host, so that's another Airbnb account. You can give them access to your listing to manage, so that they can do it from their account. They don't have to log in. Or there's also the possibility to ask for the help of a hosting team. That's usually for professionals who can manage several listings at once. But in the end, the result is the same. Is you keep the listing in your account as a private owner, and you give management to another Airbnb account, and they can work without having to log into yours. But in the first place, you're not supposed to log in to someone else's account, and it makes sense that you get blocked or locked out, actually.
Thanks, Patrice. How does Airbnb handle multiple listings for the same property then? So if a owner and someone who's marketing a property on their behalf as well decide to have two of the same listing, how does Airbnb handle that sort of situation?
So we're talking about multiple actual different spaces or multiple listings?
Multiple listings for the same property. So the owner is marketing it through one listing, and the exact same property is then marketed by an agent.
That would be a problem. Yeah, they will be considered as duplicate. That the same team I mentioned, actually, again, the trust and safety team that does, some proactive screenings. If it turns out there's a very same place, and we can find it out when they see, the same address, for example, they will look, for example, if it's several rooms in one place because it's a bed and breakfast, for example, so that makes sense. But if it turns out it's let's say an entire home, that is, and you have two listings on Airbnb for the same space, one will be taken out, and usually the one that has been created last, obviously. So this is important to keep in mind. You can't do that. So it's, for example, if someone tried to get more bookings by giving management of listing to several different companies, but they all work with Airbnb, you have to be specific, saying, okay, listen, this is on Airbnb through this company, so you can't list it yourself on Airbnb. This will block anyway. This will be proactively screened and take it out.
Thanks, Patrice, for clarifying that. Mm-hmm. I think that's all we've got time for today. We've had a lot of questions, so please be assured that we will address those questions. And Patrice, I'm sure we can work with you to get any sort of answers that require information from your side.
Absolutely.
But thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. And thank you particularly to Patrice and Daniil for joining us as well today. We hope you have a great day, and I'm sure we'll speak to you all soon, and we'll be in touch with your unanswered questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Bye.